Okay.
I know, seriously. Yeah.
Okay. You guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. And sometimes the TV goes out on my computer for some reason, so let me know if you guys can't see it too. Guys on Zoom, I'm horrible at watching the chat at the same time as presenting. So if you have questions, I think we're a small enough group today that I can say just to interrupt me and ask your questions. And yeah, so we're just going over purchase agreements today. I'm not doing all the forms again. We've gone over them before, recently with the changes, but 2-3 weeks ago, we did that, maybe more, maybe it was a month ago. Some things have changed in the purchase agreement since that last class I did, but it's mostly the same. But now that we're actually using it, maybe we all need a refresher on it. And I'm gonna put an asterisk next to everything I say that this is all gonna change again. No, not by the 17th. No, this was our final version, and I've gotten some feedback from some agents, from some other thoughts of my own that of things I want to change still. I just don't want to change every time a thought comes up. So I'm trying to time it so I'm not giving you guys a new purchase agreement every week. But it's gonna change. It might be in a couple weeks, it might be in a couple months, but things will change again. Some of the stuff in the purchase contracts will change, and much less substantial changes than what we're doing now. So this is just for purchase stuff. So actually, let me start with the buyer agreements, the exclusive buyer agreements. We have a non-exclusive as well, guys, but I don't recommend using a non-exclusive. I know some brokerages aren't using them at all. Where's our buyer agreement? Okay. We also have a non-exclusive. I put it in. I know a lot of brokerages aren't even putting that in there. The reason I did is because I think a lot of us work with investors who are not going to sign an exclusive. And I didn't want to prevent you guys from being able to work with some buyers like that. And I wouldn't recommend using a non-exclusive. If there's ways to use the exclusive to make it sort of non-exclusive-ish. In other words, if you can make it exclusive for today, so everything I show you today is covered, so you can do it that way. You can say just multifamilies are my exclusive with you, or just South Euclid is my exclusive with you. So if you go buy in Beechwood, you go use somebody else. So there's ways, if your buyer doesn't want it to be totally exclusive, you can work with this exclusive representation agreement. But this one is changed since the one that we did the class. So we have our own Keller Williams Living version now. Yeah, revised 8.6. Yeah. 8.1. I don't know who printed that stuff for you guys today. That wasn't my selection of documents, so I don't know who printed that, and I'm not sure what the 8.1 version is versus the 8.6 version. But the one in dot loop should be 8.6. If you guys ever see one that says any other date, then let me know, because
I had 8.1 on Monday, and Andrea said, and I haven't compared the two yet either, but
yeah, I don't know what the differences are. Okay, So, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, and I'm gonna blow through this pretty quickly, but basically, you've got your exclusive dates here. So if you're working with them for 1 day or 1 month or 6 months, you guys can just determine that. Um, the buyers are initialing that they're not under an exclusive with anybody other than you. Okay. It's got a list of our duties. It's got a list of the buyer's duty to cooperate. It's also got information there about that once you've shown them that property, regardless of the expiration date of the exclusive, that's some, there's a time limit. I can't remember what that time limit is, but they can't say, oh, today's the last day of our exclusive. Tomorrow I'm going to buy this house, not with you. So it's not endless. I don't recall how long it is, but that's all in there. And there's information. I don't know. I'm just kind of blowing through this one.
Yeah, so at the very top though, it says begin on and continue until midnight on. So there's 2 dates there, right?
Yeah,
So
so
you're saying that if somebody did it after that expiration date.
I'm saying I showed you a house today and we expire at midnight tonight, and tomorrow you decide to buy that house,
Yes.
that's still with me.
So you got-
Yeah, okay.
Okay. But you just don't know the time.
It's in here somewhere.
Oh, in there.
It's in here
Okay.
somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So there's something in here about the home warranty that we may be receiving a fee if you choose to have a home warranty. And then it talks about our compensation. So this is language, the caps is language that is required by the NAR settlement. The rest of that sentence is what's required by the state of Ohio.
Difference from the one.
That might be the only difference from the
And
8-1.
on 58, it does say the commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable, but it doesn't have the.
Okay.
Right, all that other.
So all that extra language, the one that you guys have printed in front of you from 8-1 doesn't have that after the fully negotiable. That the rest of that sentence is what the state of Ohio has just put in. We don't have to use this until that Ohio language until mid-October, but just put it in now so we don't have to worry about it later. In consideration, your commission of first blank with a dollar sign, $2.95, unless your team, so I know some of you guys charge $3.99, $4.99, whatever your team charges. And then a percentage of the purchase price, your percentage goes in there. And if there's a minimum that you guys are charging, that would go in here. I think if I'm not mistaken, our brokerage minimum is 3,500. But I think most of the properties we're selling are gonna have more than 3,500 in commission. So
So the brokerage minimum is 3,500?
we gotta reference our independent contractor agreement, but I'm pretty sure it's 3,500.
Oh.
Okay. Just know that if you guys leave this dollar amount blank here, the office is charging that $2.95. So if you don't put it in, it's coming out of your total commission. So if your buyer says, I'm not paying that $2.95, I want that to be zero, you'll earn your, call it 3%, but I'm not giving you 3% plus $2.95. Just know that when the commission comes in, you're getting the 3% less the $2.90, less the fee. That I know part of that may go to the agent, but and the reason we have it as a blank is because it's fully negotiable, number one. Number two is I would love to have several versions with our different, the $2.95, that's our brokerage fee, but some of the teams charge $3.99 and $4.99. I was advised we cannot have the same contract with different fees typed in there. So you're not going to be getting those filled in. Also, if you guys know, some people in here are on teams that charge $3.99 and $4.99, I'm going to be coming out with a new version of our listing agreement that has a blank where you can write in your fee, but we cannot have how we used to have it, have a same contract with the 399 or 49. Okay,
Rick,
here's your,
can you go back for a second?
yep.
This is Kathleen.
Hi.
Let's go back to that minimum dollar.
Yep.
Is that going to confuse a buyer? So if we put in the commission on line 62, I put a percentage there. And
Mhm.
then the minimum of our office is, what did you say, 35? 35.
Yep.
What about my commission 3% is more money? They're gonna be like, I'd rather pay you the 3,500. Like what?
That's the minimum. That's the minimum, and we've always had that. I mean, it's in our old listing agreements too, and frankly, because my average sale price, everything, almost all my commissions are over the minimum anyway. So on my listing agreements, I always put NA there.
I was gonna say-
You could do that, but just, I mean, because I think most of us are having average commissions over that anyway, so it shouldn't be a big issue. But just, I mean, if you're going to, if I was going to list a house for $50,000, I wouldn't put NA for the minimum commission, right? And if
Okay.
you're working with a buyer who's looking at $50,000 houses, maybe you need to be more aware of that minimum commission versus if you're showing your buyer $400,000 houses, the minimum commission's irrelevant, right?
Okay, I
Does that make
understand.
sense?
So I could put an NA or 3,500.
Yeah, but just know if you're, I mean, if you are showing,
The lower end.
cheap property, just, yeah, then if your buyer's looking at something inexpensive, I would definitely not skip that minimum there.
Okay,
Got it?
thank
Here's,
you.
you guys were asking about the protection period, and here it is, it's 30 days, so. Oh, looks like I'm missing a text box. I will correct that, but there's a termination, so either party can terminate this with blank days written notice. We always have the confidentiality. Our agency policy is in here, the fair housing stuff, cybersecurity. Other potential buyers. This paragraph talks about contemporaneous offers. So this is basically saying that it's possible that you may be working with two buyers interested in the same property. And how do we handle that? So by the way, hopefully we all know how to handle that, but if you ever have two buyers for the same property wanting to write offers on the same property, you have to notify them both that, and there's a form for contemporaneous offers, to notify them in writing. And if one of those parties is not comfortable with it, and that's totally understandable, then you should be referring them to another agent. Okay.
Rick,
Yep.
on number 74, then we should go ahead and put two boxes in so that they can initial and date that.
On line 74.
Yeah, no, well, I'm
74,
74, you
yeah,
might be,
76.
God only knows what.
He
you
said
are.
he's gonna actually.
Did you say something about two boxes need to be there? That's
Oh,
all
no,
we-
I'm just saying I need to add a text box here for termination. That's all I was saying.
Okay, I wonder if we had an initial. for
No,
something.
it's because Dotloop normally sets up these forms for us, and they were 5 weeks out on setting these things up.
Okay.
Because every brokerage in America is doing what we're doing right now. So I set these up myself and I missed one. So
Okay.
I will add that text box there. I'm gonna add the text box, and I know I say this on every email that I send out about new forms. If you guys have your own templated folder, I can add that text box, but it's not gonna change it in your private folder. So just know that I'm gonna correct it, and you guys will have to update it if you want it there. Or you can add the text box. I mean, that's something simple that you guys can add in your own too. All right. Buyers are gonna sign, the agent is going to sign. And now this is a big one that everybody's been asking about, and this has changed since the class that I taught last time. I've told you guys before that you can never accept more than what your buyer brokerage, your exclusive buyer representation agreement says. So if I told my buyer I'm working for 3% and you're offering me 4% on your listing, I cannot take 4%. I can only take 3% because that's what I agreed with my buyer. We now what's changed since my last class is we do have an opportunity to amend the agreement, the buyer agreement. So my agreement, probably a better example, I told my buyer I'll work for 2%, you're offering 3 or 3.2. Buyer, this property is offering me 3%. Would you agree to that? Sure, I don't care. Okay, great. Let's amend it. And now,
Supersedes that.
so we cannot, yeah, that I think if you guys recall, one of the documents I struck a line, say, because it said that this agreement supersedes a buyer rep agreement, and I struck that out because our attorney said you can't supersede it. Well, this kind of it does that without superseding, right? So now the buyer might say, no, you said you'd work for 2, they're offering you 3. I want that 1% difference. So we can't just take it without the buyer agreeing to it. But if the buyer agrees to amend it, then you have an opportunity to amend it.
Perfect, I have a question. So you fill that out, let's just, my client's got, let's say that I take my client through before I go there, I see that she's offering 4%. Then I go back to my client and say, hey, they're offering 4%, can we amend this?
Yes, so the question was if Sean's showing one of Michaeline's listings and Sean's buyer agreement says 3%, Michaeline put out a flyer, an email, or some sort of advertisement saying we're paying 4%. How do we do that? And the answer is you just take your buyer agreement back to your buyer, and you, if as long as they agree to it, you're going to write in here that the amendment is as follows, and it's 4% commission, and then buyer signs it, agent signs it, and now you can go write an offer on Michaeline's listing and get your 4%.
But also, if it was 3%, your buyer client might want the 1% towards their own concessions, yes?
Well, yes,
That's gonna come up. Yeah.
I think it's going to come up with smart buyers. I think I think smart buyers are going to say, oh, Michaeline's offering 4%, but you said you'd work for 3, so maybe I can get the
1%.
purchase price down by 1%, or maybe she'll give me the 1% as a closing cost credit instead. I think a savvy buyer might think that way. So maybe I'm wrong. We'll see as
False, yeah.
see how things play out. But yeah, I mean, in theory, we can amend this though to say whatever.
Does that also apply to,
I can write one, put it all down. Also, by the way, the old one is still valid, too.
Okay, thank you for letting me know.
That way, some of that confusion came from.
Okay, thank you for letting me know that. I'll get that removed.
also seller offering bonuses to the buyer's agent, that would be then also.
Yeah, if it's a bonus, it's a commission. A bonus is still a commission. So if you said you're working for 3% and now my listing is offering 3%, but now I'm saying, oh, there's a $5,000 bonus to the agent, that 5,000 is still a commission. So unless I amend this, I can't take the bonus. That's still a commission.
So what happens like if they don't get that house and now you have it signed, you have to get a whole new one signed for the next time? You can keep amending.
You can amend it over and
You can
over.
keep-
Yeah, you can keep on amending it if they don't get that house and then they,
So I don't have to go through the whole.
no, you can amend it again.
Just in.
Yeah. Yeah, just if you need to amend it multiple times, you can just,
Because this is only for our records, right? It's not going to a lender, it's not going to.
correct. This is for us, and if NAR is the police of this. And so if NAR ever requests it, I think they said we have 24 hours to produce it. So NAR is the police. So my guess is it's gonna come up when there's a grievance.
Yeah.
You know, it's not gonna be requested until there's a grievance is my guess, but
And so what happens, so Irene and I get an agreement signed the same day with the same client.
two agents have an exclusive with the same buyer.
Correct.
Well, it says at the top, they're initialing, that you represent that you are not presently bound by an exclusive written buyer representation agreement by another real estate brokerage. So Well, and if they lie and they have an exclusive with Howard Hanna and with you, and they didn't care, they initialed it because you could get them into this house quicker, then, I think it's their problem when Howard Hanna and Keller Williams are both trying to get commission paid because we both have, it's, it's not really, that wouldn't be a grievance with another brokerage in us. That would be between us and that client or the other brokerage. I mean, that client said that you earned your 3% if I buy a house during this period. And if they sign that same form with another brokerage, then they owe both of us a commission and then, yeah, that's going to be their problem. And at the same time, this can be terminated with written notice. So, by either party. So if they really were using you just to get in today because their agent's not available today, then they can terminate it. Although if they buy that property in the next 30 days, they're using you. So,
Rick, if I may, for just a second,
Yep.
the question came up earlier, if this goes to anybody, if this is just for our records, and quite true, it is mostly for our records with the consumer. It is smart that you send this or something to the lender when you start working with a buyer, that the lender understands that the buyer is responsible for paying you whatever the commission is, because it's going to come out on the settlement statement. And if for some reason you have not discussed what your fee is with the lender, it's very possible that you might get to the closing table and there is no money to pay you. So you may not have to send this anywhere, but you would definitely want to have the discussion with the lender of what you're charging.
Yeah.
Or what, proof of funds, like again, where
yeah, if you agreed, you're my buyer and you agreed to pay me $25,000 in commissions and you don't have $25,000 plus your regular closing costs, then your lender should probably know that, because then you're not getting.
Well, and the things that I worried about, and I voiced earlier, were, again, if there's problems with inspections, if the client can't take on repairs and pay your commission, what happens then? If there's an appraisal gap and your client can't pay both, what do we do?
There are going to be a lot of what ifs. Oh, sorry, Rick, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You can answer.
I was gonna say, there are going to be a lot of what ifs because this is new to every single person. And I will say that between the three brokerages currently, we have seen where we've had to let deals close at less than the commission that was owed to the agent in order to get it to close. And in some cases, well, in one case in particular, 0 commission was paid to the buyer's agent in order to get it to close. We are going to run into those scenarios. There's no way to protect ourselves, with the exception of, Rick, I think when you go through this, if it's similar to legacies, there is a spot for a retainer. So you can talk about that a little bit, but there are going to be issues.
Yeah, no, we don't have a retainer option in our contract.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that an option for us?
No, not right now. No. No, the reason why I didn't put in a retainer is because there's just a lot of fogginess around it that I wasn't comfortable with. And if we can find a good way to do it, then we may add it in the future. But right now, we're not taking retainers.
Fogginess, this is all fog.
It's all foggy. Yeah. All right. That's a buyer rep agreement. Can I move on to purchase agreement?
Yes.
Okay. So this is our new purchase agreement as it stands now. And like I said, bear with me. I've already got one substantial change I'd like to add to it. I just am waiting. I'm figuring in the next 2-3 weeks, you guys will all be calling and hollering at me about different things that should be added, removed, whatever. So we'll find the appropriate time to make a bulk change at that time. So the beginning part is pretty much the same as our old contract. Buyer's name, property address, parcel number, fixtures stay with the property. Fixtures, remember, are anything attached to the property, not only the house, but the property. I've had to call sellers that have taken landscaping out of the yard and things like that. Added to this from our old purchase agreement is video/smart doorbells. because people were taking their Ring cameras with them and putting up a cheap doorbell and got into arguments about that. And recently I had somebody take their cameras that were mounted to the house, like security surveillance cameras. They were mounted to the house. They're a fixture. They removed them, left holes in the siding. We had problems with that. So now it's clear that that is a fixture and not personal property.
I feel like we should have TV brackets.
TV brackets.
Mount to brackets,
Hmm.
because when they're taking them down, there's damage to the walls.
Yeah. That's a,
Most of my clients leave them for that exact reason, and some of them do and some of them don't.
yeah. That's a good thought for my next round of revisions to this. All right, chattel, personal property, pool table,
Rick?
yep,
Just PS, that's in many other brokers' purchase agreements, right up front. There's have
what
stated
is the
about,
TV break?
yeah.
Okay. That's good to know.
And so I don't even know why we have chattel in here, because most lenders want it taken out unless it's a cash deal.
No, so my experience, I know every lender is different. My experience with most lenders is if I put in a pool table or a ping pong table or whatever, and if I put in there has no value, in my experience, the lenders have been okay with that. I know some lenders might still not like it and you might have to remove it, but I put in pool table, which has no value. Swimming pool equipment has no value. Obviously, we know it has value, but
You can't say.
yeah, but then the lender doesn't pull it out for the appraisal. Okay. And then excluded fixtures, self-explanatory. Secondary offer, nothing changed there. Purchase price, earnest money. This changed slightly, not from my last class, but from our old purchase agreement. So no longer an option to deposit it with the brokerage. No longer an option to have a promissory note, because those were just confusing everybody anyways. And then the other thing that was confusing people is a lot of title companies are doing ACH. Is an ACH a check? Is it a wire? What is it? So now it's check or ACH to the escrow agent. Your financing type is the same. Closing cost credit was not in our old purchase agreement. I think most of us were writing that in a added text box or on a blank addendum. Now it's in here, seller shall credit buyer blank percent and or blank dollar amounts towards buyer's closing cost prepaids, closing cost points and prepaids. We're going to be using this, hang on one second, Ken. We're going to be using this, I think, more often, because if we're not going to be asking the seller to pay our commission, we may just choose to ask for a closing cost credit. You're going to pay me 2% commission on this. That's a closing cost now. You're my buyer, you're paying me the 2%. That's just considered a closing cost. So if we don't want to go through the whole, how much are you offering? Can you pay this, not pay this, whatever. Now we can just say, okay, buyer, you're going to pay me that 2%. And I'm going to put in here 2% closing cost credit. That's going to offset your commissions that the buyers are going to pay. So that's.
So it's gonna be on the hook of what title companies are gonna receive our earnest money letter as a standard.
Buyers paying me the $10,000 commission and buyers getting a $10,000 closing cost credit from the seller. Just be careful when using the closing cost credits, because lenders do have maximum amounts that they will allow depending on the loan type. So if your buyer already needs a 3% concession, regardless of your commissions, and now you want another 3% for your commissions to be added on there and you're asking 6%, you better make sure that that loan type allows a 6% closing cost credit.
One other question, Rick. I always put initial boxes for my clients on every single page. Can we have those added just now with the more detail that we need? I think with no ones that don't have.
Yeah, I
those.
agree.
Most of the
I,
contracts have them.
yeah, we can. I thought about it and I didn't see the point in it. Have you guys ever had a problem with somebody swapping out a page and saying, no, that's not page 2, this is page 2? Yeah.
No, never had that problem.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it and I chose not to do that, but I mean, it's something I can reconsider when I do my next round of revisions. Ken, you had a question? Okay. All right, moving along. Electronic data security, nothing changed here. Guys, there's a lot of wire fraud. Just tell your clients you're never sending them wire instructions. That it should only come from the title company and it's going to come in a secured email. It's going to come from Qualia or one of those other email platforms that all the title companies are using. Most title companies, to my knowledge, are sending wire instructions with missing the last 3 or 4 numbers anyways, which forces you to call them and say, hey, is this really from you? And what's the last 4 digits of the wire instructions? So just make sure that they never wire money because you sent an email, because if you did, it's probably not from you. Right? It shouldn't be from you. I'll say it that way. You guys should not be sending any wire instructions. All right, financing. Nothing changed here. How many days to make application? When's the written loan commitment? And then closing, we added some check boxes here so that you guys don't have to strike through different title company names. So you can use American Title Solutions, who's our affiliate, or if you're not, then you can check the other and write in whoever you want to write in there. If you're using American Title Solutions, you must have our ABA added to the file. They won't even look at it if you don't include that. All right. The walkthrough is all the same. The possession time is the same. Prorations, nothing changed. Closing costs changed. There's no more reference of commissions in here. So it's I shouldn't say that. It's references commissions owed by buyer and commissions owed by seller, but it does not say all that language that used to be in there about our commissions made up of 2 parts, the seller's commissions, and all that is gone. So buyer just says real estate brokerage commissions owed by buyer, and same thing for seller, real estate commissions owed by seller. Okay. If they elect to have a home warranty or not. This came up the other day, by the way. It's not related to the purchase agreement, but with the home warranty, our APHW order form is required on every single deal that we do. Every time you take a listing, they should sign it, either accepting a home warranty or waiving a home warranty, and every buyer that you work with should be signing it, either accepting the America's Preferred or waiving the America's Preferred. If the seller is offering HWA or whatever the other companies are, if you're getting a home warranty but it's not America's Preferred, still have the America's Preferred waived. Okay, that's a requirement because they are helping us with our legal fees in the event of a lawsuit with a transaction. They will only do that if the client had an opportunity to take an America's Preferred home warranty. Doesn't mean they have to accept the warranty. They had to have an opportunity to accept it. Okay.
Rich, I do use another warranty company. And I have them just waive that one, but it has to be home. It has to be us. It has to
They
be-
have to, you can use a different company. That's fine. We're not dictating that you have to use America's Preferred. But if your clients are taking another warranty, whether they're taking one or not, regardless, that America's Preferred has to be either accepted or waived. So inspections are mostly the same. What's changed is we've added any other inspection recommended by a general home inspector.
Written it 3,000 times.
Right, now you don't have to write it 3,000 more times. And congratulations on selling 3,000 homes. just keep in mind that I think most of our agents are trained well on this, but I've seen some mistakes on this. The days are days after acceptance, not days. So in other words, other recommended by the general home inspector should be days after acceptance. So if you write 10 there, don't, I'm not sure I'm going to say this right. Let me just type it out. This is wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
This is wrong. This means that you can do any other inspection 3 days after. So your general home inspector comes on day 5, you don't get the opportunity. That is not 3 days after the general home. If you want it, oops. If you wanted the extra 3 days for other inspections, this is how you would write it. Okay. 10.
It's 10.
10 days. Yep. So that's the correct way of writing it. I think most of our agents are trained to do that correctly, but I've seen a few mistakes lately. And so I want to make sure that it's days after acceptance, not days after the last inspection. Okay. And then your removal of contingency, again, nothing changed. And again, remember, you have 3 days after your last inspection. So if it's not 72 hours, it's 3 business days. So
Just over the weekend.
I'm sorry, it's 3 calendar days, not 72 hours. In other words, I did my last inspection today. Today's day 0, tomorrow's day 1, 2, 3, that's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. By Friday at 11:59 PM is when that deadline is for the ROC. Okay. Yeah, so not 72 hours, but 3 full business days. 3 full calendar days. Sorry, guys. Weekends count. Yes.
Rick.
Yep.
I have a question, and this has happened to me multiple times. So going back to general, let's say they have general and radon marked within 7 days. They leave the radon testing on day 7 when they've done their general home inspection. And obviously they can't reply to that until another 2 days till it gets picked up. But sometimes they'll respond to me that they're not going to reply for 3 more days after the date of pickup, because to them that was date of last inspection.
I can't speak to that because you're talking about other brokerages contracts. I can speak to if that was
No, well,
your
yeah. Oh, okay,
right?
go ahead. Keep
So
going. Yep.
if it's your buyer, I
Mhm.
had this exact conversation with Cindy. So
Mhm.
we had this conversation over I think it was the water potability, right? So
Okay.
let's say,
Similarly, where they have a testing.
yeah. So
Yeah.
let's say you had 7 days, they come out, they take your water sample on day 7, but they send it off to a lab, and that could take 24 hours, and it might be a weekend, and it might be 3 days before you get the lab results back, right?
Right.
I couldn't see this also because you don't know when people are booking to get that done or how backed up people are. At least certain inspectors.
I wouldn't put as soon as possible because I don't think that's clearly defined. So I would put 7 days, but if the well inspector's not getting out there till day 6 or 7, and you know that you're gonna need extra time, get an amendment, or better yet, just make this 10 days, when you write the offer, just give yourself, that way if you're gonna do the water potability the same time as your general home, now you have extra time to do it. But if you're running out of time and you're waiting on a lab to get results back on water or septic or radon or whatever, either you need to make sure you give yourself extra time when you write the offer, which is what I do, or get an amendment before your clock runs out. Yep.
So my question is, when does the clock run out on things that have a lab time? And
The clock,
or
no, the
per,
clock runs out. If day 7, they can't even took that water sample and you know you're not getting lab results back the same day, you
right.
need an extension. The clock runs out on day 7, or in this case, I wrote 10 days. So on day 10, I better have that lab report back. The inspection period is over, and
Okay.
I do have my yeah.
Understood.
within 3 days from the date that the last, when the inspection is completed, that's how I interpret it.
Yeah, it's not complete until you get the results back.
Right. It's not so the 3 days, it's not complete. So, right, but your lab results better be back by that day
Within
7.
that 3 day, yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
And then you have 3 days after your last inspection. So I got my lab results back today from the water. Now, today's day 0, so by Friday, I better have that ROC done.
That could be amended as well if you need more time.
It could be amended if you need more time, as long as it's mutually agreeable, but think about it from a seller's perspective. If you were representing a seller and the buyer said, I need more time to finish my radon because we didn't set it up until day 7, and now I need another 48 hours to get the results back. From a seller's perspective, why would they do that? No, we agreed that you were going to be doing all your inspections in that 7 days. So I always, how I fill it out, you guys can fill it out however you want to, however your clients want you to, whatever the circumstance is, but I always fill it out 7 days for general home, seven days for I do 7 days for general home, I do 10 days for radon, I do 10 days for other, and then I don't wait till 7 days. I tell my clients, try to get this done. If you can get your inspector in there in day 3, get them in there in day 3, because then you have more time for that electrician or the roofer or the structural engineer or whatever you need to come in afterwards. You have that extra time. The only time I change those dates really, or recommend to my client to change the dates, is when we get, because we're talking calendar days, not business days, when we get to Christmas and New Year's and everybody's on vacation, and Christmas is a day. So, New Year's Day is a day, because it's calendar days, not business days. So when we get to December and January, sometimes I'm giving myself 10 and 12 days instead of 7 and 10. But yeah, just keep in mind that it's calendar days. And yes, you can get an addendum to change those dates, but it's got to be mutually agreed upon. And I can't think of a good circumstance where a seller is going to say, sure, I'll let you keep on tying my house up for another week while you guys figure out if you like it or not. So you have 3 days to respond with an ROC. Okay, so we finished our last inspection today. Friday is the last day to get the ROC over to the buyer. Then we have, I'm sorry, to the seller. Then we have 3 more days to come to a mutual agreement. So if there's going to be back and forth, that doesn't mean that the seller's got 3 days to respond to you. That means if the seller's going to respond and you're going to respond back and we're going to go back and forth, we have to be done in 3 days. Okay. And I've been on the wrong side of those deals where there's been a backup offer that's been better than ours, and they ghosted me for 3 days and we didn't really have much recourse. I mean, I advised my buyer, look, at this point, you can send a clear ROC. If you don't care that the AC is not working, send a clean ROC before day 3's up. We knew why they were ghosting us and we just couldn't do anything about it. My buyer wasn't comfortable with it, and so we let it go. Pest and wood destroying, if you guys want to use this paragraph, I was told we cannot take it out from our contract because it's compliant with VA. I just hate the language in there, so I usually, and I'm missing a couple check boxes, so I'll go back and add those check boxes too. I just don't like how restrictive this language is, so that's why I never use it. If my buyer wants a pest inspection, I just put it up here under other, or the general home inspector will just recommend that you have, I see a lot of droppings, or I see something going on there that might be termites. I recommend having a pest inspection.
But isn't that new language saying the cost not to exceed 500?
No, it's always said that. And that's been my biggest problem with this paragraph for 17 years now, is that $500 cost, because now I can terminate it because it's 501. I don't have to go back and say, you pay the $1 difference. I'm going to terminate this contract now. Or it's $400, but it's something that scares you as the buyer and you just don't want to move forward, because even though it's less than 500, it's something that's extra scary to you. You don't have the right to terminate now. So strike through, take a strike through it. That's what I usually do. Yeah. Unless it's a VA, if you're working with VA that requires pest. By the way, VA pest inspections have changed. It used to be that the veteran was not allowed to pay for a pest inspection. Could be paid by anybody except for the veteran. They've changed that now, so now the veteran is allowed to pay for it. It's usually like $100. So, lead paint, it's all the same. Our lead paint disclosure has changed. A bunch of you, by the way, have complained to me about how I set up that lead paint disclosure, the new disclosure form, because the boxes were so tiny to squeeze everybody's initials in. Ohio Realtors put out a nice clean version that has more space, so I've swapped it out. So if you haven't noticed, now it looks a lot prettier. Make sure you're giving them the lead paint booklet too from the EPA for your buyers. Megan's law is the same, the property condition, the disclosures haven't changed on any of that stuff. Damage, I hope you guys never have to worry about damaged property. Rich and I know all too well about that lately. Sorry, Rich. But if a property is damaged in excess of 10% before the closing, the buyer has to either terminate the contract or accept the insurance proceeds, take the house as is, and whatever the insurance proceeds are, I'll take those proceeds, I'll fix the house. If there's damage less than 10% of the purchase price, the seller's obligated to put it back into the same condition that it was prior to the damage. Okay. Hopefully you guys never have to deal with that. This text box is an extra one. That should be not there. If you guys see any formatting things like that that are goofy, let me know so I can fix them.
176.
I'm sorry.
176. I don't have the T. Fire has no. 176.
Oh, has not. Yep.
And then 189.
It says has not. It's just
Yeah,
the
just
initial
that.
boxes on it.
The initial box is over. Yep. There.
And then
197, 198, there's an extra box floating around.
Thank you.
over party.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, just if you guys see that kind of stuff, let me know and I'll have to go back and fix it.
215. When I say it anymore. You got extra box over and.
Let's see that.
Where? I'm sorry.
213.
Oh, yeah, I already got rid of that one.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. All right.
Sorry, it was something you were saying right before he was talking about the boxes. I can't remember now. It was like right before that.
No, I
I
was just
was-
saying, there's nothing changed with the disclosures and the damage to the property and all that stuff.
I have a quick question, Rick, and I probably should have asked it when we did the exclusive buyer representation. I know with VA, they're very strict about certain things. Are VA veterans gonna be able to pay us commission?
Yes,
Yes.
VA buyers are allowed to pay us a commission now. The Veteran Administration is saying that they've temporarily lifted that restriction while they evaluate the whole thing. My guess is it's gonna be a permanent change, but for now it's considered a temporary change, but now the veterans are allowed to pay us a commission. Okay. And then the addenda is all the same except like Michaeline, I've typed in affiliated business arrangement disclosures
3,000.
3,000 times. Is that how many times?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank
So
you.
now that's on there. You will notice what's not on there is the next
It's still-
document that we're going to be going over, which is the buyer brokerage compensation agreement, and that is intentional. And you guys should not write that in under other. Okay,
Oh, really?
yeah,
Should we have this, should this be just a checkbox? So the agreement, the exclusive buyer agreement, should that? No.
no, the buyer agreement is not an addendum to the purchase agreement. No. And actually, by the way, guys, I just saw one of, I don't know if you guys are in as many stupid Facebook groups as I'm in, but this real estate mastermind group, I don't know if you guys are in that. It's awful. Don't join it. Somebody, it's really bad. Somebody just posted in there that a listing agent said that they will not schedule an appointment until they see their buyer agency agreement. That is not a listing agent's business. Just like we're not going to say, I'm not showing your house until you show me your listing agreement. We don't have a right to ask for their listing agreement. They don't have a right to ask for a buyer agreement. Call me. Yeah, if somebody, I mean, I haven't heard of it happening in our area, but if it does, let me know, because that's not allowed. Yeah.
And the agent legit would not let the other agent in without seeing it, and so she redacted the commission portion of the buyer agency and sent it over because it was like an immediate need, and then going forward, I think Rob said, just call me and fill it.
Yeah,
It has happened.
it happened. Okay.
So.
I couldn't hear
Yeah.
that. What was the? What was
No,
the
Danielle
comment?
was, yeah, Danielle was just saying that that actually did happen at Elevate recently. And what the agent did was, because they had a need to get them in quickly and didn't want to start that fight and delay getting into the house, they redacted the information on that buyer agreement regarding commission, just so that they can get into the house. And then,
Mhm.
but
So what is the reason for that? Like,
I don't know.
is he approved
I don't
or
know.
what
We
is-
shouldn't, when we're listing agents, we shouldn't be asking for it. It's not our job to police that.
Right.
Okay. And
Somebody who probably thinks they know, like, they're overly confident around all of this, I think, like, it's somebody who thinks they know more than they actually do know about it, and so.
mhm.
Whether they think
Yeah.
they're protecting their client, whether they think they're following the rules.
You guys, as listing agents, should not be asking for buyer agreements before allowing a showing. And if you get asked for one to schedule a showing, let me know. Because they shouldn't be, and it's not their, like I said, we can't ask for their listing agreement before we present a house to, right? I mean, we've never asked for a listing agreement. Why would we ask for a buyer rep agreement? Sally, you had a question?
Yeah, it's different from the topic. Are you finished with that topic?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so you said don't add the buyer brokerage compensation as an other. I wrote one this weekend and I did. Does that, is it a, I mean, I won't do it going forward.
It's done now, so it's fine. Yeah, no, and so the buyer brokerage agreement is coming up next, and that is not an addendum to our purchase agreement. Our attorney has been adamant that commissions cannot be in our purchase agreement because this is an agreement between a buyer and a seller, and we are not party to that contract. So so it cannot be added on there. I pled with her 15 different ways. I think Rich did the same, and we got the same answer over and over. We're not party. Right now, there's no workaround. Maybe, hopefully, there's a workaround. I think got one in my back pocket I want to talk to her about next time I get her on the phone. But for now, it's not in the contract, and it cannot be in the contract.
So Rick, are you thinking that because it's, all right, so going all the way back to Nancy Lair's days, she used to always say this in our real estate contract classes, that it should never be in the purchase agreement, period, for those exact reasons. But what I am wondering, your concern is because, do you feel like we're not going to get paid because it's not showing that way? Or, I mean, what's the fear behind it?
Yeah, I mean, if we're asking our buyers to pay us, it's no big deal because we have a buyer representation to get paid that way. But
Right.
if we're asking the seller to pay us and it's not in the contract, then in theory, the way that it should be is that we're going to take this buyer brokerage compensation agreement before I write an offer on your house, I'm gonna send you this buyer brokerage compensation agreement. It's gonna say seller agrees to pay me 3%. Sorry, what did I do? So in theory, before I write an offer, I'm going to send you this agreement. I'm going to ask you and your client to sign. It gets signed by everybody. It gets signed by buyer, gets signed by seller, gets signed by the listing brokerage and the buyer's brokerage. So in theory, before I write an offer on your listing, Laura, I'm going to give you this, going to ask you and your clients to sign that you're going to pay me 3%. And hopefully everybody signs it, but there's going to be some sellers that are going to say, well, I'm not agreeing to pay you 3% until I see your offer. But, which I think is a fair argument, but at the same time, I'm missing text boxes here too. So I got a few things to fix up. But I think the answer to that is, well, great. If you get an offer that doesn't net you enough, if you got to pay me, 6,000, if I'm writing you 3% on a $200,000 offer, and that's not enough for you because now it's really a 194 offer in your eyes, well, then you're just going to counter at 206 at that point, right?
Well, then again, what happens? We have problems with home inspections or appraisal gaps, then what? Somebody agrees to
Well,
something.
they already signed it. Well, there's-
I don't think that's well, I hear what you're saying with the appraisal gaps and escalate or what do you say? Inspection issues, things that might cause, right, but that's no different than today. I don't know how that, I don't understand the correlation between this and
They're
that.
going to pay us something and then should go sideways and they want to change stuff, then what?
Okay, but right now I've accepted your $200,000 offer and you're asking me to do some repairs that's gonna cost me $3,000 and I'm not gonna do that. It's, I think that's, yeah, I think it's two separate issues. And maybe in the seller's mind, they're just looking at their net proceeds and they say, okay, well, I'm already paying you this and I have to spend this on repairs. I can't do all that, but it's two separate issues. I wouldn't mix up appraisal gaps and inspection issues with our commissions. Two totally separate things.
So, right, this can be sent prior to writing off, so for multiple offers.
In theory, right. Well, yeah, so that's where I think that's why I would like to have this in the contract if there's a way to get it into the contract, because yeah, you're gonna get into a predicament where there's an offer deadline. You just showed it was it 2:00? You just finished showing it. Your client wants to write and there's a 5 p.m. deadline and you don't have time to send this over. So your options are send this over with the contract and maybe the seller signs the contract, but then refuses to sign this and that's one thing that could happen. I don't know how likely that is to happen, but it's going to happen sometime. And if you're the one that it happens to, you're not going to be happy about it. Or the better option when you're up against a time crunch, I think, is forget the commissions. Buyer will pay me my 3%, and I'm going to ask 3% in closing cost credit. Then it doesn't matter. But that being said, I still want this buyer brokerage compensation agreement signed, and at least by your buyer. So if your buyer is the one paying you and the seller doesn't want to sign this, this should still be a required document. It is still a required document to have your client sign it, even if the seller's not paying you.
Well, if the seller is paying. What if they don't want to, like that, backtracking, it's like, what if they don't want to sign it until they see an offer? Well, like, what if that is the issue? Then we that, I'm just thinking how this all flows. It's that might come up. I mean, I think so.
I don't have an answer for you right now.
I understand.
Yeah.
Really, what's the difference? Obviously, this is going to be the seller if they're doing any kind of consent, but what is the difference for our buyers between this document and that?
One is an exclusive right to represent, and the other is
that talks about what they're going to pay us in commission, right?
Right.
So what's the difference between those two for a buyer?
well, no. So the buyer brokerage compensation will just be in your loop anyway. So you might have written 3%, but to get the deal done, you've agreed to 2%. You can still memorialize it there. So it needs to be memorialized on the buyer broker compensation disclosure too. All right. All right, so yeah, so on this buyer, it's pretty self-explanatory. The seller, the listing brokerage, the buyer, the buyer's brokerage.
Thank you.
One's the seller.
Well, I know.
Seller. What is it?
No, down here, seller agrees to pay or the listing broker.
Oh, I'm sorry. Next paragraph.
I'm sorry,
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I think that's been confusing for a lot of people. I've had questions about this a lot in the last few days. So, the difference is semantics, I think, and we wouldn't necessarily know since we're not privy to that listing contract. So the difference would be my listing agreement says that the listing agent's getting 3% commission and buyer's agent is getting nothing because it's negotiable. Then the answer would be seller is going to pay. But if the listing agreement says that I'm earning 3% and we're going to offer 2%, now it's coming from the listing brokerage. It's semantics. And the couple agents have called me on this recently because we don't know, because we don't see their listing agreement, so we have no idea how it's written, right? So a couple of agents, I had one agent call me and said, I wrote it in, the seller pays, and is that right? And I said, it's fine, and if it should be the listing agent, they'll correct it and just change it. And the other agent called with the exact opposite. They wrote it in the listing agent. They did the listing brokerage to pay. They weren't sure if that was correct, if it should be seller. And I told them the same thing. Just leave it that way for now. It's fine. Submit it that way. And if it's supposed to be the seller, but the difference would be, think about your listing agreement. If my listing says that I'm earning 3%, and that's going just to me as a listing agent, and there's nothing for a cooperating broker, then it's coming from the seller. But if my listing agreement says I'm getting 6%, and I'm agreeing to cooperate for another for 3% to the buyer's agent, now it's coming from the listing brokerage, not the seller. The seller's paying 6 to the listing brokerage, and the listing brokerage is paying 3.
Number one, and then the one, four.
You don't fill out two of those.
No, I would, yeah, you should, well, yeah, you can fill out just one of those two, unless you know some circumstance, if the listing agent shared with you that seller's paying you 1 and I'm paying you 1, then you can fill it out that way. But it's, I don't care if you use line 1 or 2, and if the listing agent corrects you when they sign off on it, as long as they're not changing it to 3, I don't think it matters. Now, if they're going to say, no, we're seller's not paying you, listing broker's not paying you, buyer's paying you the 3, then that's a material change that you need to understand, right?
So could you have on this form 1%, 1%, and 1%?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so if it could be, and it says, fully negotiable and may be paid by seller, the buyer, the landlord, the tenant, or a third party, or by sharing or splitting the fees and commissions between brokerages. So it could be 1, and then here, lines 1 + 2 + 3 shall be X dollars, or you can put a percentage there, 3%.
Rick, I have a question.
Yeah.
What I'm really concerned about is, especially on the weekends or evenings, deadlines, that if I've got to get this signed, which I do by my clients, and signed by a broker, and I can't get a hold of you, or,
I don't have to sign this. You can sign listing, buyer, broker, or agent identified above. So you don't
Okay.
need my signature on this. You guys are authorized to sign it as an agent.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So it is buyer, seller, and agent. It never has to be signed by the broker.
Correct.
Can be signed by agents only. Okay, that's good to
Buyer,
know. Sorry.
brokerage, it's agent identified above. So that would be you.
Yeah, okay.
And if you're up against the deadline, I mean, I think that was my first thought about this Form 2, and if you're up against a deadline and you don't know if, you know, if I'm not advertising that I'm gonna pay you a commission, so you don't know one way or the other, I think you just ask for it as a closing cost credit. And that
So
might
what's your,
comes when you're already asking for a closing cost credit for something else, but I think that's where we're gonna have to get good at these conversations.
right, so then we go back to the purchase agreement and we mark it as a closing cost credit at the bottom of page 1 on line 36. And then
Correct.
we don't have this addendum, but we still have our buyer exclusive representation, yada, yada. So then basically the buyer, instead of coming up with the closing costs, at closing, they're gonna pay us instead. That's the bottom line? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, makes sense.
I'm sorry, say that again.
So 3% there, unless the seller, if the buyer needs that credit for something else, then you would revert that to 0 or commission. Yeah, for 6, if their max is 3%.
That's conventional, I think FHA can be 6, I think.
I'm not, I'm sorry,
So if
you've lost me on that question.
Say 3% closing costs, let's say. But then your buyer needs that 3%, and their loan will only give you 3%. You have to supersede your commission to what their needs are. Or no.
Well, no, so the question is, buyer's gonna pay the commissions, buyer's already needing 3% closing cost credit. Without your commissions involved, they need the 3% closing cost credit, right? And so now you add 3% of your commission, so now they really need 6%. But the loan type, this is why I said you needed to talk to your lender, to the lenders, and understand, Chris and David both have, I've got the identical flyer branded to Cross Country and Keller Mortgage. They've both got flyers out there that show each type of loan and how much the max concession is. So you can refer to those flyers or call the lender and say, what's the story here? How much can we ask for and how much do they really need? But yeah, you might get into a predicament where they're gonna owe you 3% commission and they don't have enough funds and then their loan's not gonna close.
Well, keep in mind too, like, if we know that there's no commission being offered, you can tell them that upfront, so you don't go to see that house, right? Like, that's still an option too.
That's still an option. You can tell them that they're not, but the whole point of this settlement is that commissions are negotiable. So yes, you can say they're not offering a co-broke
Yeah.
commission, so you're gonna have to pay me, but at the same time, if commissions are all negotiable, how about we go see this house, instead of offering 200, you offer 206 and put in there that the seller's gonna pay that commission.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's easier to pay it over 30 years than it is $6,000 in court.
All that's in a time constraint, that when you're trying to put an offer in at a deadline, that you're not gonna be able to get a hold of the lender, you're not gonna be able to get, all those things have to line up, or then you might be burned.
Maybe,
Right.
Maybe.
I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
Because it's a time.
but we should be having those conversations with our buyers during a buyer consult.
I think
so
you have
that
to get
they-
those ducks in a row before you start.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get really good at our conversations. That's what it comes down to. All right. Nothing else has really changed. I mean, we still need a consumer guide. We still need agency, I didn't go over agency disclosures, all that stuff. That stuff is all the same. There's a new checklist in dot loop that includes a lot of this stuff. So check your checklists. I need to correct some of these formats. If you guys see some things that you want, see some formatting changes that need to happen, let me know and I'll work on them as I can. And we're gonna get through this. Yeah.
So, so each brokerage obviously has a different broker. So this form here, the one that we, just been talking about, the buyer brokerage compensation disclosure. So are most of them, like, I'm gonna just say larger brokerages, it doesn't really matter which brokerage, but are most of them probably gonna have a form similar to this that has to be signed prior to an offer going?
I have no idea. I don't know what other brokerages are doing.
Probably not.
I don't know. No, I know we have that. I liked, that he came out from Ohio Realtors. I didn't love their form, but I liked the concept of the form. And that's why I put one out for us. I know that a couple other brokerages have them. I know I sold a house before all these changes, but it was off market. The listing agent told me it was a 3-2, but it wasn't an MLS, so I couldn't refer back to the MLS. So I used the buyer brokerage agreement. It was a Berkshire Hathaway agent. They didn't flinch at it. They just said, okay, got it signed.
Okay.
I mean, there was no issue to get it signed, so.
Rick, question about the buyer broker commission. Is it something that I could put into the supplements? And
No.
for agents to send to me?
No.
Nope.
Nothing commission is allowed in the MLS. You can't put a broker remark saying we're offering commissions. We can't put a supplement that says we're offering commissions. We can't even say buyer agents welcome.
What about, for people, even our listings, we send the agents a text message saying, here's the compensation being offered.
We can offer compensation off the MLS.
So showing that.
No, we cannot do it through Zillow, showings, Realtor, homes,
We can text, right?
but we can text, we can email, we can put out flyers. We can offer it any other way besides the MLS or any sort of portal of the MLS.
We
Right.
could have yard signs, right? We could have sign writers if we really wanted to.
Yeah.
Funny meme that has like, on the key, it's got like 3%. So when somebody goes to the house.
I was just talking about that today. Yeah, so your key tag says 3% on it or something in your lockbox, and that's fine. I think that's fine. I think it's kind of goofy, and I'm not going to be doing it, but I don't think that's breaking any of the rules. And unless it's a super lockbox, because Supra is part of the MLS, so we don't really use super lockboxes in our area, so that may not be an issue. Yeah, Sandy.
I'm going back to this brokerage compensation disclosure agreement. Seller agrees to pay, listing brokerage agrees to pay, buyer agrees to pay. I'm hung up on this. Somebody said you can put 1, 1, and 1.
Yeah.
Seller agrees to pay 1%. Seller, okay, if we do 1, 1, and 1, seller agrees to pay 1%. Listing brokerage agrees to pay 1%. How is that differentiated? I'm confused.
One is the seller's proceeds. The other one is my seller's already. I'm sorry, guys, on Zoom. I don't know if you heard the question. The question is back to this, who's paying the commissions? The seller's paying me a commission of 1%. That's coming from the seller's proceeds. The listing brokerage is paying 1%. That means I'm taking my 3% commission and I'm giving you one.
Say 4% is being offered, and the listing agent is taking 3. The other 1% comes from the brokerage. So there's 1%.
You wouldn't know what the listing brokerage is getting. You don't know right now what the listing brokerage is getting. It doesn't matter what the listing brokerage is getting, but if the listing brokerage is paying you versus the seller paying you, like I said, I don't really care how you guys write it. If they correct it between seller and listing brokerage, I don't really care. But the difference would be one is coming from the seller's proceeds. The other way is I'm taking 3% commission. So the seller's already lost that 3%, right? It's already coming out of their proceeds. I'm taking my 3%. I'll give you 1% of the purchase price. Now I'm receiving 2, you're receiving 1.
So you're receiving 2 as the listing agent.
Yes, you've agreed to 3% with the brokerage.
Correct.
Okay, so the brokerage, really, it's still coming from the brokerage. But okay.
Yes,
Okay.
and then the buyer agrees to pay 3%. They only have to make up 1% difference.
Well, I get that. I just, the whole thing, the way it's broken down here, I'm gonna struggle with this.
Don't struggle with it. I don't care when your buyer's not paying you, don't struggle with this. I don't care when your buyer's not the one paying you. I don't care if you use 1 or 2.
Oh.
And if the listing agent says, no, the seller's not paying you, the brokerage is paying you, and they want to change this 3 from line 1 to line 2, I don't care. I care if they want to change it from line 1 to line 3, because now it's my client's money. But whether it's coming from the seller or from the listing brokerage, doesn't matter. There might be brokerages, I don't know what other brokerages are doing. I don't want to know what they're doing because that's what got us into this mess to begin with. But there might be brokerages that are listing properties for 6%. And I don't think that's what I'm going to be doing in my business, but there might be a broker out there saying, okay, I'm still charging 6% and I'm going to pay the buyer's agent 3%. And that's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It just can't be a standard anymore. And we have to break it out and we have to have all this extra language here in bold. But if they're taking 6% and paying 3%, then it's coming from the listing brokerage, because if it's not your buyer, they're still getting the 6%, right? So yeah.
The MLS, nothing about commission.
Correct.
Under comments. I had a conversation with agent last week, and this is what she's told me that the MLS told her. Seller will consider contribution.
Well, that's a new field in the MLS. Seller contributions is a new field. It's not a required field, but we can answer seller contributions, yes, no, or negotiable. I'm probably leaving that blank, to be honest with you, because it's not a required field. I'm probably going to leave it blank. I think that's different advice than I said in my last class, but I think the more I think about it, the more I think I want to leave that blank. And that's not going to be a brokerage standard. That's, if you get
Sticky, because then it's like, what was the percentage?
Well, and my issue with it, the more I think about it, is the more I think it's tied to commissions.
Yep.
And so, and we're not allowed to tie anything in the MLS to commissions. And it may not be directly tied to commissions, but we all know it's tied to commissions. So,
Well, as a buyer's agent, I still like to see that where we can go.
and if you call me as a buyer's agent, I'm the listing agent, you call me and say it's negotiable.
Well, and that's exactly.
Send me the buyer brokerage agreement and we'll look at it and we'll sign it or we won't.
The listing agents answer the different forms now.
Okay. Oh, they know we go. I mean, also, you can show them houses, you got no answers. No, that's gonna get it. So they don't. And if they don't, you just need not to be there with the one, but I know. I know, really know.
Well, I think, there might be a phone call.
Back to the listing, that's obviously that can happen now, we know that, I mean, that happens now. I mean, so that's a possibility too.
A buyer can go straight to the listing agent if that's certainly their prerogative, but if you've got an exclusive buyer agreement, then they're tied to you. So then, I mean, then are we gonna be suing somebody? Probably not. But will they get a phone call saying, hey, you bought this house, you have this exclusive, here's a copy of your exclusive, that might happen. Are we gonna actually start suing buyers? Probably not, because that's not a good look for the brokerage. So.
I mean, we can't really, I mean, I don't know. You can't really do, I mean, what can you do?
You can call and ask, you can send them a letter, you can send them a copy of your exclusive.
Yeah.
And they can also say, you know what, I'm going tomorrow to see this house with the listing agent. I'm going to send you a written notice. I'm terminating our agreement. I mean. But if we show our value, they won't be doing that, right? So that's why I said we got to get good with our conversations and show our value. Yeah.
Have we talked about having a place for KW living listings to sit internally with commission?
We have not had that conversation.
So we are not allowed to do that outside of this brokerage, but we are allowed to do it inside of this brokerage. The only way that it works is if our agents do it. But what we can do is you can create a Google form so that when you put something in the MLS, you also just put it on this Google form and that filters to a Google Drive document that everybody in the brokerage has access to. We are doing this.
Okay, and I think that's something so everybody on Zoom that couldn't hear Danielle in the back of the room, what we are allowed to do with this settlement is we are allowed to have one central place that says 123 Main Street, I'm offering a 3-2 commission. 456 Main Street, I'm offering 1%, 678, I'm offering 0. We're not allowed to have that with other brokerages. We are allowed to have that within Keller Williams Living. So what Danielle was suggesting is that we have some sort of living document that when we list a house, we all go in and put it in there so that we know if we're showing a living, KW Living listing. Yeah, it's something, I think, so here's what I would say is we've got our leadership meeting tomorrow. Maybe we can maybe start that conversation tomorrow at our leadership committee, our leadership meeting on how to organize that. And in the meantime, send emails, send blast emails to our brokerage. You can send blast emails to other brokerages too. So you can send. Absolutely, you can, you're absolutely.
Right. Florida, my daughter's in both, then she brings up bullshit. Why do you do that?
You can advertise it anywhere that's not MLS or syndicated by the MLS. So we can't put it in showing times, we can't put it on Zillow, we can't put it on homes.com, cannot put it in the MLS. But you can blast email every single agent that's in the MLS that we're offering a 3-2 commission. Something I haven't put much thought into, but if we are going to get blasted with all these emails from all these brokerages, I might just create a folder in my Gmail account for commission so that when I do have a buyer for 123 Main Street, I can go see if did I ever get an email about commissions there, go find it in that folder and then yeah.
That's a good idea, Rick. You know, the one thing, can I just say, it feels so much to me like everyone's, I don't know, so much of our behavior feels like we're going to this dog eat dog scenario. And I don't know, every listing that I've talked to has asked me about it, and I've told them all the same thing. I feel like it's in your best interest, the best business decision, to still offer concessions to a buyer's agent. You know, we can certainly talk about what that looks like, et cetera, but why wouldn't you want to bring, you know, the highest number of qualified buyers with their agents to represent them in an arm's length transaction? Why wouldn't you want to do that? And
What's
not
been-
one has said, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Not one, right? It feels like they're trying to wipe buyer agents just right off the planet. That's what this feels like to me. You know, kind of going back to the days where they really just were listing agents. And I don't know, I feel like we got really sold down the river
So
by
I know
NAR and our MLSs.
I think most of our agents don't do commercial or don't do much commercial, but this is how the commercial world's always been. The
Yeah,
commercial
letter of intent and,
commercial brokerages do not have an MLS. They've got CoStar, but CoStar is not nearly as powerful as our MLS. And nowhere in CoStar does it have a spot for a commission. And yet, if you write an offer on a apartment building, you're not doing it for free. I mean,
right.
Commercial brokers look at us cross-eyed how we do business, and we look at them cross-eyed how they do business, but we all do business. So I think at the end, this is just going to be a change. We're gonna work through it. We're gonna figure it out, and in 6 months or a year from now, we're gonna
Be laughing at it like we were when the new TRID came out and we all thought the world was gonna end.
God, don't bring up that word TRID again. I can't think about
Okay.
that anymore. But yeah, when TRID came out, right? When TRID started, that was a big crazy thing in our industry, and now it's no big deal, right? So, all right.
Question, and sorry I didn't bring this up sooner. When you going over the purchase agreement, it says 8/6/24, but in living,
Yep,
you
that's a mistake. I gotta, there's both copies, I think, in there, and I gotta remove one of them.
So which one are we removing?
8.6.
You're removing 8.6 and we're gonna use 8.9, right?
8.6 is the right version. Is there an 8.9?
You have 8.6 here, but 8.9 is still in the dot loop.
8.1 is still in that.
8.1 is still in dot loop. I need to remove that one. Okay.
Okay.
The one that
No,
we're looking at right now is the correct version. I think the only difference is, I don't know what the only difference is on this one, actually. I don't know. I'm working on cleaning it up. I know there was some duplicates and there was some changes that happened last minute, so I'll work on cleaning that up.
Thank you.
And also I wanted, our dot loop was so messy before with millions of documents that were branded to Keller Williams Greater Cleveland Southeast. There was ones that were branded to Greater Cleveland Northeast for some reason. I found a legacy document in there. I don't know where all these forms came from. So I removed everything and I created a new folder for you guys that has what I want you guys to be using. And if there's something that I missed, let me know, because I have all those old documents and I can, if it was inadvertently skipped, I'll add it back in.
Rick, I have one more question on the MLS settlement update that was sent out yesterday on what to do. It's got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and on 3 it says always disclose the commission is not set by law, fully negotiable. If a property was listed prior to having the disclosure in the listing agreement, you will need to either have the seller sign a new agreement or amendment with that required disclosure by August 12th.
Yeah, I did see that and I have some questions about that, so I will
Yeah.
probably be giving you guys guidance on that soon.
Okay, because I
Uh,
have not done that and I don't want to get audited and,
Yeah,
pay
no,
fines.
I have questions about that myself and I haven't gotten clear answers
Okay.
from Ohio Realtors or from the MLS or from Cindy. And I'm trying to understand that requirement. My gut tells me that we don't have to do that because our old listing agreements, some brokerages listing agreements said that they will offer the cooperating compensation in the MLS.
Mm-hmm.
And now we can't do that, so you would need an amendment because of that. Our old listing agreement said we were going to offer cooperating compensation to members of the MLS, but it never said explicitly that we will advertise that commission in the MLS. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we need that, and that was my thought on it.
Okay.
And if you remember my first email talking about listings, I said this is a good opportunity to just terminate the old one and get a new one signed. And if you need a price reduction, just get it on a new listing agreement. If you need a date change, just get it on a new listing agreement. And I think that would be a good practice, but I realize that's not necessarily the most practical advice to go get all new listing agreements signed for everybody. But
Right. But you're right. It does say buyer brokers who are members of multiple listing services.
correct.
That's
And I
what
know
ours says.
yeah, and some of them said specifically that they will advertise it in the multiple listing service.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously we can't do that anymore. So I think that's where an amendment would need to be. That's where an amendment would need to be had if we had said specifically that it's going to be advertised in the MLS. But it's implied that we're advertising it there, but it's not explicitly stated. So I'm trying to. I've been asking about that for months actually, and I've been
Okay.
getting different answers for months. So
Okay. All right. Thank you. That was my last question. Thanks.
all right, thank you guys. Welcome back, Amanda. I see you're on here.
It's actually her daughter-in-law, but hi,
Oh.
thank you.
Oh, hi. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
I don't know how to end the Zoom. Does anybody know how to do
Yeah,
this?
leave, hold on, I'll use a purchase.
How do I think I need to stop screen share, right? What?
Stop video.
And
End.
there we go.